Scotch. Here it goes down into my belly.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and another Whiskey Wednesday. And so I am with my friend Carolyn today, who is from England through Seattle, now into Boston, and she's holed up in Boston. I think she's moved to Boston because she's still a bit bitter about the Tea Party. We're not going to talk about that today, but anyway, we decided we on occasion drink together, and so we're having a Whiskey Wednesday. Although I'm disappointed to say that she's not drinking whiskey. Carolyn, what's in your glass?
I have a gin and tonic.
A gin and tonic. That's very British of you. I have I don't know if you can see that. Amore 12. I'm going to pour a glass. And of course, because the Seahawks have a winning season, we've got the Seahawks whiskey glass, and we will get after this. Okay, cheers.
Cheers.
To us and those like us, may we live forever.
I should just say, for gin and for people who know me, I've got a nice big bottle of the Bombay Sapphire. And when I go home to see my mum, we kind of tread the worn path because it's only like a 40-minute drive from my mum's place where they distill this. So yeah.
Is that from Costco?
Probably. I don't know.
And, quick confessional, how many days does that last you? Is it 3 or 4?
I think I can usually stretch to 5.
Wow. Moderation during the pandemic. Why cheers you? You didn't even drink.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's disappointing. Cheers.
Yeah.
Now, we have known each other for, how long have we known each other?
7 years.
About 7 years.
Yeah.
And so you have a well-established event planning company, and you do everything from small VIP birthdays all the way up to the conference that I came and visited you at in Vegas last year, which was about 20,000 people. Was it that big?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you, your business is rocking and rolling. Then of course, this little thing called COVID pops up, and obviously it shakes the business model. Shook mine as well as a speaker. So I want to ask you kind of some pointed questions that we haven't had a chance to talk about before, but about how things have changed. So when COVID hit, how long did it take for clients to start to make major adjustments on their conferences?
So when did COVID hit? So we're talking March time. So a lot of the large scale conferences were quite quick in terms of to go to the virtual space. I think the smaller events, pretty much I think all the event planners were in denial. So we went through that period of the change graph, denial, anger, all that kind of stuff. I think I went through it a couple of times. But really, so the large scale, I'd say almost immediately. And then the smaller events kind of picked up steam probably 3 to 4 weeks afterwards.
And have you, when you talk about that kind of that denial, are you noticing, what are we, I came home March 13th from my tour after it kind of imploded that week before. Has most of the market kind of figured out that things have to shift, or are there still people that you're talking to that are kind of holding out going, January 2021, it's going to be a reset and we're going to be ready to go back in person?
Yeah, I think the majority of people we are not going to go back until there's a vaccination. The people I'm talking to anyway, there are quite a few associations who I think are still in denial and are waiting for things to happen, things to drop. But associations I'm talking to are realizing that they actually have to do something because they can't just wait because they have members to look after, etc. So I think there's a balance, or a mix, I should say, of people who are just waiting and then people who are not waiting and just, this is our new normal. So,
and those ones that are, and I'm finding the same thing, is I have a busier speaking season than I normally do because people kind of immediately, I think around August or September, it clicked in on them. Our membership, a core value of what we bring to the table is events, and you can't go a year of charging fees and not providing anything. And so it seemed like August, September, people really jumped on the bandwagon going, we have to do something. How did your kind of thought process go from massive 10, 20,000 person in-person conferences to creating something virtual? What was your mindset, or how did you figure that out?
Well, one of the things that I tell my clients is they have an opportunity to target thousands more people than they would for a live event. And also that people, associations and corporates, what they need is the community, what they miss. We're social animals. we go to conferences, not really for the content, we go for the connections, we go for the engagement, we go for potentially landing your next big deal or finding your next mentor. So that was kind of a miss. But over the last 8-9 months, Zoom fatigue, buzzword of 2020, is huge. And people are trying to find ways to connect with, their members or their clients, etc. So having that shift is, they just had to do it, but also not create a virtual event like they would a live event. So you can't pick up a live event and plop it into the virtual world. It just doesn't work like that, from content to engagement and all that kind of stuff. How we kind of pivoted was we just really focused all our live events and we just turned them to the virtual world. There was no waiting. It was like, okay, this is happening. We are stuck in the virtual world for a good year. So let's just make it happen.
And do you find that there's now a separation kind of in the market between groups that early adopted and said, okay, we need to shift, and then those that are like we're waiting? Like, it almost seems like people are still stuck in DVD, not realizing that streaming is happening. And so when you're talking, do you find that people are now frustrated? This is what I'm hearing, is that people are like, geez, maybe we're just going to write off 2020 and hope for something new in 2021. Are you seeing a big separation between those that are staying competitive and then those that are just getting left behind?
Yes, I am. And it's the larger events. So like the Facebooks, the Apples, the Microsofts of this world, they're putting on great big events and they're learning from the events that they've done. Some are not taking the feedback and just producing content for the sake of producing content. So again, I ask my clients, is like, why are you doing this event? What are your attendees missing by attending your event? What kind of needs do they need? Because what we found in the last 8 months, tons and tons of events, just way too many. And they started to get really boring and some repetitive. And I wrote a blog recently about how a lot of them was just going to pre-record. It wasn't live. There was no risk being taken. And, the technology has come on a long way in the last 8 months. I mean, that kind of technology would probably take years to develop, but people have been doing it in months. So there is a divide and people are still waiting. But I think they're realizing slowly that they actually do need to do something, whether it is just a Zoom webinar, which can be really boring. So
right. And so you talked about like the pre-roll as compared to live. It's not risky, right? Like, it's pretty safe, pretty pedestrian to pre-record a reel and then just play it. And I mean, there's no intention of showing up on time if you can watch it, tomorrow at 2. Is there a benefit? And what's the benefit of having live virtual events as compared to curating different speakers and just slotting them in and making it a little Susie homemaker type perfect little box?
Well, there's pros and cons for both. I think most producers would love to have it all pre-recorded because it's less risk for them. You kind of know what's going to happen, and hopefully your internet doesn't go, so you can still push play, etc. But what we're finding is people want, and it's only happened in the last 8 months, the attendees' experience and their demands are, they want to be able to have content as quickly as turning on Netflix and, finding whatever they're going to watch. So it really comes down to engagement. It's like, so live and pre-record, you can have a whole load of on-demand stuff for pre-record, but having it live, you can have people interacting, you can have polls, you can have Q&A. It's just more, I suppose it's more engagement for the attendee, and they can tell when it's live and they can tell when it's pre-record. A lot of people say, oh, they can't tell. You can tell when something is pre-recorded. So
okay, so tell me that. How can you tell? What is it? Does it just seem super polished, like they've taken a bunch of takes? Is it not as off the cuff? What should people look for those frauds?
Oh,
my words, not yours.
Well, for pre-records, it's edited. You can tell it's edited. They have a bit at the beginning, bit at the end. I mean, if you've got a professional broadcaster and an AV company, they can do that for you for live as well. But it's just super polished, only because I've had to help speakers do pre-records, the number of takes that they do as well. So yeah, it's just like watching a TV show.
And so talk to me about, and so we talked about kind of the importance of that engagement, and I'm the same way. As if I'm not a speaker at a conference, but a participant, I normally don't love sitting into speakers, right? There might be a handful that I want to go to, but I actually like that in between, the coffee breaks, the luncheons, the dinners, like that breakout where you get to connect with people. How are people replicating that through virtual?
It's actually really hard. It's really tough to replicate meeting someone in a corridor or sitting next to them on a bus going between venues. It's really hard to replicate that. In terms of the virtual space, you do have those breakouts on Zoom. And I would say if you're looking for platforms as well, look for the platforms that offer the networking and the roundtables. So you can actually go, if you're in an event in a platform, you and I see that we have connection, we can actually go into a Zoom roundtable and we can connect, we can invite other people. I think there's still a long way to go in terms of the virtual space of replicating what you just said for live, when you're live. Also having some fun with the attendees for like gamification, where you can earn points and earn prizes, which is good for sponsors as well because they can sponsor stuff. But gamification, you can also tie in with networking. So did you meet that person, you get so many points, or how many people did you meet, etc. So get sponsors to offer prizes.
And did you ever do that before, or is that kind of part of the innovation that this year has required, is coming up with those new ways?
Gamification has been around for a while. I mean, we've used it on live events when we have a mobile app. So the virtual space is not new. I personally have had it in a lot of my conferences that I've done. There's always that digital virtual element for those who can't attend. Going forwards, I think it's going to be massive. It's almost going to be just as important as like food and beverage was. Yeah, gamification and Q&A and polls have always they've been around for a while. So events are going to come back for sure. I know events that are happening now. I know some big ones that have happened and some small ones that have happened. The smaller ones have fared better than the larger ones. Going forwards for 21, it's really tough to know because we don't know exactly where we stand with COVID, etc. But looking at hybrid is you're going to have two audiences. Hybrid's going to be ones that are live, and then you have the ones that are virtual. And then not separating them. Don't make them the ugly sisters. You want them to join together. You want to integrate them. You want to get them networking with each other. You want them sharing the same content. Maybe having a virtual speaker and maybe you have a live speaker, but it goes both ways. But don't rely on just hybrid because, as I say, we don't know the situation. We don't know what governments are going to, around the world, are going to allow so many groups. And what sizes. Right now I've got a couple of live events next year, and we're already looking at the COVID plans. So that includes contact tracing, it includes maybe on-site testing, it includes you have to be 6 feet apart. For example, if you sit at a 6-foot round table for a lunch, I can only have 4 people at that table. And so on average, you've got like 500 square foot per 10 attendees. What you had before as, let's say, a ballroom for a meeting, you're going to have to like double that.
Now, you're still planning events with clients and guiding them through it, but you've also added kind of a new model to your business, which is kind of a coaching model for some of those smaller organizations that may not have the resources to work with you where you're overseeing everything. You're actually giving advice to them on how to move ahead.
I find it really popular, actually, especially in associations. The virtual space is new to them. They know how to put on a live event, and that might not be their full-time job. It's, their part-time job where they have to put on an event for their organization. The virtual world is brand new, and it is like the wild, wild west out there in terms of platforms and streaming services and engagement tools. And if you get into fundraising, there's a whole load of fundraising tools. So just supporting them in terms of don't start with the platform, go back. What are you trying to achieve? What does success look like? And then kind of what's the attendee journey? How do you want the attendees to feel by the time you finished? What does your organization want to feel by the time they finish? What kind of metrics? And then you can work backwards and start slotting in, okay, we want to use this platform, we want to stream this is in a number of days. And so really focusing and helping them focus on their goals first, and why they want to put on an event, which will then determine, as I say, what platforms and what the agenda looks like.
Last question, and this one is more an emotional one than a professional one. So you've been in Boston for how long? 8
months.
Okay, so when you're walking around, I assume you explored the city?
I have. Yes.
Okay, so when you're walking around, do you look around with contempt, knowing that that particular geotagged location is the kind of the precipice of kicking your mother country out of what became the most powerful nation in the world? Like, do you look around and like get upset? Do you steal tea bags from Starbucks? Like, how do you defend the honor of Mother Britannica?
By just being me. Just being me.
And donkey rides to come to Boston summer 2021.
Yes.
If it's all right with you, and I say this to everyone, even though I'm going to ask for permission, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'd like to put your information in the notes below. And if people have questions about their events, they need help with their events, maybe they'd like to hear more about the coaching that you do for people within corporations and associations to kind of get them evolved into what I consider that new normal. I'll put your contact info below, and then if people have questions, they can reach out and have a conversation.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Because, well, I was going to do it anyway. But as always, cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers
One of my drinking buddies when we're in Seattle. It'll be a while till we have another drink, but of course, when you're back home and I can come down, or when I find myself to the East Coast, we'll tip a Pimm's and what is it? Pimm's and cucumber?
Pimm's. Oh my god.
What's it called? Pimm's cup?
It's not.
What is that called?
Pimm's o'clock. Pimm's o'clock.
Pimm's o'clock. Wow, that's a new word.
Which is every hour.
For some of us. I'm going to talk to you about a 12-step program in the next video. Anyway, everyone, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, you can email chris@goco.com, comments below. Consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and we will see you in the next video.